Welcome to Inside Style. I'm your host, George Worrell, and thank you for tuning in today. Today's topic is breaking boundaries and breaking barriers. An exclusive interview with Washington, D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith, trailblazer in law enforcement. Pamela Smith has 25 years of distinguished law enforcement experience. Earning numerous accommodations and awards throughout her career, she joined the United States Park Police throughout her career. She was an officer there and also in San Francisco field office. Her proactive efforts in drug enforcement, sobriety checkpoints, and community engagement earned her multiple accommodations. Smith's remarkable work ethic led her to reassignment in New York City's field office, where she joined the K-9 unit as a K-9 handler and in an explosive ordnance of detection unit. She later became a senior instructor at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, specializing in law enforcement driving training program. Rising through the ranks as sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, and deputy chief, Smith achieved a historic milestone in 2021 when she was appointed chief of police for the United States Park Police, becoming the first African-American female to hold this position in the agency's 230-year history. This is just a small window of accomplishments, including being an ordained Baptist minister. I welcome to Inside Style, Chief Pamela Smith.
Mr. Worrell, thank you so much for having me here. It is certainly an honor to be on your podcast, on your show, and it's certainly an honor for me to be here today.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you for taking the time. And I want to just get right into it. Describe to us how that road was. How was it growing up? You're from Arkansas, I believe?
That's correct. Pine Bluff, to be
exact.
Pine
Bluff, yeah. How was it for you, growing up and, in that part of the country? And what was the things that you thought about as a child? Did you think you would be here? Did you think, how was that road?
Not in a big city, that's for sure.
Right.
And I grew up in really difficult times. I had a mom and dad. My mom and dad were married very early, 16, 17 years old. And, my dad struggled with addiction from drugs. And that kind of led over into a lot of physical abuse. I learned later physical abuse towards my mom. Mm-hmm. And then when they divorced, my mom ended up being really using a lot of alcohol, substance abuse. And that led to some really traumatic times for us in our home. Mm-hmm. Very challenging. The only thing we really had, and the one thing that she did not stop us from doing, was going to church. Mm. I will start by saying I love my mother with everything I have inside of me. My mother passed away unexpectedly last year in April. Any of those things that happened while we were children resolved itself. Because one of the things that I do believe in is that we are to honor our mother and our father so that my days on this land can be long. And I believe in that verse, in that passage of scripture. But the one thing that she didn't take from us was church. And that's all I had when I was in foster care. My brother and I, Walter Smith, and myself, all we could really focus on was the church and the words and the love that was poured out towards us when everyone in the church knew we had been placed in foster care. The pastor and his wife really took a great interest in us. And would come and visit us in the foster care system. The mother who adopted me, Miss Thomas, now Brooks, would write letters to me to keep me encouraged. Write letters to my brother to keep us both encouraged. And that's really been the principle and the foundation of what I've lived upon in my 50-something years. I can tell you that I had people tell me to my face, even as a social worker. I had a social worker tell me to my face that I would never amount to anything. And here's a social worker who was supposed to help me, to help my family, to help us become reunified with our mom. But that's what she told us, and that's the one thing that I remembered. And in my spirit, I said, I would never never live up to what her words were. And when I graduated from high school, I took my high school diploma back over to the Arkansas Department of Human Services, and I showed it to her. When I graduated from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, I took my degree back to, she was still there, to the Department of Human Services, and I showed it to her.
What did she say?
She cried, and she asked for my forgiveness. And what I told her was that, ma'am, you were already forgiven.
Do you think that was like a spur? Was that something that was inside of you, no matter what somebody said, that could destroy you mentally, sometimes physically? Was there something in you that backed that up? Like, I'm going to prove this wrong. That's not in me. I know there's something greater in me from an early age.
You know, one of the things that there were people that poured positiveness in me. I remember my high school coach, Coach Andrew Butler, he has since passed, was the first adult person who actually gave me a hug, male, that hugged me, and side hug, it was appropriate, and would tell me, you can do this. I was running track. He was my track coach. And so Philippians 4:13 has been my favorite scripture since childhood. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it's not a challenge when someone tells me that I can't do it. It helps me to pray a little harder and to focus a little more, and knowing that I can do all things. I mean, who would have thought? A little girl from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and I say this, 2 ponytails on her head, riding a brown bicycle up and down Ohio Street as a young girl, would end up being the chief of police in the nation's capital. I mean, it is surreal. There are moments, because I'm human, where I sit back and tears come to my eyes, and I let the tears flow because I'm grateful. Listen, Mayor Muriel Bowser could have chosen anyone across the United States of America to do this job, because this was a national search. And I'm grateful. Every single day, whatever task she puts in front of me, I'm up for the challenge. Why? Because she believed in me.
And that she believed in you, and you believed in you.
I did. I believed I could do this job.
You believe in you. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe I could do this job. I had a lot of naysayers when I came in. There were articles written and all kinds of things, but I didn't. And I told you, those are things that are distractions. Those are things that are meant to distract us. I have to have something to believe in. I heard someone say, I read an article. I try not to read them because one of my mentors said, hey, if you start reading all the articles, you're going to find yourself going down a spiral. I have to stay focused. And the bigger picture is to fight crime here in the District of Columbia. And I remember someone writing in the newspaper, actually someone saying to my face, and I think it may have been also to my face, we don't need a preacher, we need a police chief. And I will say to everyone, my first calling is to Christ. That is my first call, and every single day I wake up in the morning, and oftentimes people will say, hey, have a good day. I have good days every day, even when things look like it's in chaos everywhere else. You know why I keep it focused? Because I know I have a dynamic team, and I know no matter what happens across the District of Columbia, that team, because I believe in them, and I encourage them the same way people have encouraged me throughout my life. And those folks that may feel as though they don't have what it takes, you know what I do? I pick up the phone and I call them and tell them it's okay. I realize what happened in your district yesterday. I realize what happened. I know you're struggling, but understand something. It's going to be okay. Because you know what? Someone told me that as a little girl. Pamela, it's going to be okay. And you know what? 50-something years later, it's been okay. This has been an amazing journey. It's one that if you had to write the end of my story, this would not be the end of my story. And I oftentimes tell people, don't try to write my story. Don't you put my book on the shelf. And the reason why I say that is because God is not through with me yet.
I so believe, one of the things that I've noticed, and we've seen each other at events and things like that you're very approachable. And usually in these type of high-profile jobs, people are kind of guarded or safe. What makes you so approachable?
Thank you for asking that question. And because... And it's a little emotional for me to say this. My household was not very kind growing up. And I often wondered, I would see young families out, people hugging. My mother didn't hug us. We didn't get hugs. We didn't get those things, those physical affirmations that kids need growing up. And there are moments when I'm walking around and I see people, sometimes they're sad, and I just stop to say hello. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? And what that elicits from me is that today may have been their worst day. But you know what? In this city, the chief of police stopped to say hello. I see it as Pamela Smith stopped to say hello, because I know I had some bad days growing up. But all it took was for somebody to say, hey, how you doing? You know what people say, like, you're so kind. And it's not a facade. That's just who I am. That's just the person and who I am. I love people. I'm passionate about people. I'm really passionate about young people. Kids don't know it. It bothers my spirit. I never went to jail. My family members never went to jail. But I used to work at the Bureau of Prisons, the Federal Correctional Bureau of Prisons in MCC, New York, New York City, 150 Park Row. But I can't imagine being locked up. I was locked up in my mind. Watch the text. I was locked up in my mind as a child. So there were moments where I felt like I couldn't see my way. There were days we didn't have food on the table. There were years where I went to school and wore the same pair of pants, 2 pair of pants, the entire school year, my 7th grade year. I'll never forget it. That's what prompted me to get a little side job so I can buy my own clothes. And clothes for my brother and my sister as well. So I can't imagine why a young person wouldn't think differently. I know sometimes we all hit rock bottom from time to time. Maybe other people don't. I did. I listen, as a teenager growing up, rock bottom. I didn't have the things that other kids have. I wanted it, but I didn't steal it to get it. You know what I did? I waited my turn. And what that meant was I sought out a little job, Taco Bell. That man was nice to me. I walked into Taco Bell. Let me tell you this story. Walked into Taco Bell, saw the owner, Jay Dickey, laying on the floor. And I reached, sir, are you okay? He says, he pulls himself out. He said, yes, I am. He said, how are you? What's your name? I said, Pamela Smith. He said, well, my name is Jay Dickey. Are you looking for a job? I said, as a matter of fact, sir, I am. And he said, come in on Monday morning, meet with Kathy Moloch, tell her I sent you, and the job is yours. And I worked Taco Bell throughout my entire high school and college years. I graduated and was still working at Taco Bell. Why? Because somebody was nice enough and kind enough to give me a job. So let me tell you something. Everywhere I go, people that I don't know, I am very approachable. Why? Because someone took a chance on me. And people hear me say that, but I say that with all sincerity. Somebody took a chance on me. They didn't have to pour into me. That family, that pastor and his wife, they didn't have to adopt me. So you know, at any time I get a chance to see people, God's people, because that's who they are, God's people, I'm going to always be approachable.
And I also think that many times people can see things in you or me or anyone that maybe we don't see ourselves at the time.
That's true.
And can help nurture that and help grow that until we get to that place. I just think from the things that you're telling me, you had an inkling very early about what you didn't want.
Right.
And going forward. So did New York, in that time there, that kind of the different jobs that you've had, did that prepare you for all the things that you find here in Washington? Because like the outreach, and you were working with people who needed counseling. You were a counselor at the time.
Substance abuse counselor.
And substance abuse. So you know that drive, and anybody that knows me knows my story that I'm 28 years clean from alcohol.
Yes, God.
And so it's that comfort that somebody said to me 28 years ago, that you can do it. You know, you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. And it was free. Many of the things that we hear are not money driven.
That's right.
When somebody says there's something special about you that you can do that, money can't buy that.
That's right.
So I'm here with you.
And you know, you say that. When I was coming through the ranks at within Park Police, leaders would say, you know, you could be the next chief of police. And you know what I would say along the way? No, not me. No, I can't. Nah, not me. And I got all the way up to captain. I remember out in being in San Francisco, and the administrative assistant who worked with us came to the door and said, you're doing such a great job. I can see you being the next chief of police. And I said, no, not me. And then I moved back from California to Washington, D.C. Leaders within the rank and file said the same thing. I could see you being chief. And I stopped talking myself out of it. And I started to believe that maybe I can't do this job. And then it went from no, I can't, to maybe I can, to yes, you can. Yes, you can do this job, Pamela. You can be the next chief of police for the U.S. Park Police. I had no idea about the history. I hadn't paid any attention to that. And I can do this job, and I can lead with excellence. And I knew I could because I've had great mentors along the way. But I also know that what God has for me, it is for me. It doesn't matter what other people might think or other people might say. If I believe it and I can see it, and I tell people all the time, when I can dream it, and before I became chief of U.S. Park Police, I saw the 4 stars on my shoulders once I became a major in the New York field office. And I said, well, Lord, if they choose not to select me, it's okay. I've had a good ride.
So we know, what were the obstacles? Because I want everybody to know that you don't just get here.
No.
And we've heard all the accolades, but what were some of the, being the first Black woman to lead all of this and to do all of that? That's heavy.
It is heavy.
But what were some of the things that they're deterrents? There are agents that are working, not even just here, but just there that may not want to see, that people are listening to, women, African Americans, young people. What would be some of the things that you think that you may have had to overcome, and what was the solution? What did you do?
I think the one thing that I had to overcome was certainly being a female in a male-dominant workforce. And in spaces and places where female typically don't have the opportunity, I had to really fight really hard to get in places. And when I say fight, not physically, but really advance myself and study really hard when it came down for promotional exams, right? I remember the very first time I took it, and I was just testing the waters. I was like, "Oh, this is tough." I came out like at number, 36 or what have you. Then I took the next, because I applied myself, right? And the rumor was there were only certain people that would make it to the top and all this other stuff. And I almost started to believe in that because I kept seeing the same people getting the movement across the organization. I was like, wow. But then what I said to myself, I was like, no, don't fall into that. You apply yourself, because if I apply myself, I'm going to give them a reason to say yes. And when I took my first promotional exam as a sergeant, I came out number 4 overall, lieutenant 4 overall, captain 2 overall, major 2 overall, and then obviously deputy chief 1 first, and then chief of police first. And so, but I think the stumbling block sometimes, there is a mental block that we talk ourselves out of, and we listen to the distractions that are out there. And clearly, whatever it may be happening in front of you may be true with your managers, your leaders, and so forth. And there were moments where I was challenged, but I also knew at that time I wasn't the supervisor. And if the supervisor is going to tell me to do something, as long as it was not unethical or immoral, then I got to do it, whether I liked it or not. But when I got to a place where I can be better than that supervisor and not be the supervisor that I never wanted, then I was able to create a pathway for those of them who are coming behind me and model a leadership behavior that demonstrates to other folks that, you know what, one day I aspire to be like Pamela Smith. One day I aspire to be like Robert J. Conte. One day I aspire to be like President Obama, right? Those aspirations are not far out of our reach. But if we can believe it, if we can see it and we can believe in it, and when you talk about obstacles, there are always going to be obstacles. It's how you overcome them that makes the difference. I could have sat and wallowed and cried and rolled over and did all the other things, but what I did was I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I stayed in the game, but I also set goals for myself, and I said, okay, I knew I wanted to be a chief of police when I joined the U.S. Park Police. On the day 1, day 2, they give you this application that you have to complete. It's called the Blue Book. And back then, they didn't have that great technology that we have today. And one of the questions was, what do you aspire to become as a member of the U.S. Park Police? And I said, the first female chief of police. I wrote that in 1997 in the book. Wow. It was in the book. But it was in a bigger book. I'm not gonna. It was in another book, but in that book, it was in the book. I wrote it, and the manifestation came to fruition in 2021. But I had to go through something, and every single thing that I've been through in life prepared me to become chief of police July 17, 2023 for the Metropolitan Police Department. That was my preparation, and I wouldn't trade anything, because I don't know what the outcome would have been. Do I wish things could have been better for me growing up? Absolutely. But that's a part of my journey.
But that's the piece that people can identify, because the people that are struggling, so the people that are fine, work every day, have money in the bank, everything's fine, the kids are good, that's fine. But somebody that can identify knowing that I don't have anything to eat, my mom's been on drugs, or my father, those are the people that your story can impact.
And tell the story.
If she can make it, I can too.
And I want them to tell the story, though. People that have struggled, because we can help somebody else. So that's all. This isn't even. This interview is nice. This isn't even about me. It's about that young girl or that young boy or that adult mother or father or boyfriend or girlfriend that's struggling, and knowing that. Listen, I Pamela Smith, because I'm Pamela Smith all day long. I recognize I'm the chief of police, but I'm Pamela Smith, and I've had to overcome. And there are still days, even in 2024, I'm still overcoming. I ain't made it yet. There's still things that I have to do, and things in our community that are very, very important to me. Walking in our communities, talking to the seniors. Yesterday, I spent some time with some seniors at Martha's table after the event was over. I stayed there just to spend some time to talk to the seniors. Seniors are important people. My grandmother invested so much in me. Do you know I can cook? I mean, like, cook from scratch.
What's your specialty?
Lasagna.
I'm coming to get some.
From scratch. I can bake a cake, red velvet cake from scratch. Just give me the ingredients. I know how to put it together. The best red velvet cake. I'm bragging on myself a little bit.
No, but
I
that's...
say all of that because people tend to think, and I love to cook. That's the other piece. I love to cook. People tend to think that I'm in this space, I'm in this place, and I can order out and all this other stuff. But I like real, authentic soul food that you can just put some greens and some fat back in a pot and cook it and let it smell all over the house. That's me. I spent this weekend doing that. That's me.
Listen, so since I was going to segue into this. You are very well groomed. It's inside style. You are very
you're too kind.
well groomed.
Yes, sir.
And I think it's important. Let's talk about that a little bit, about grooming.
Yes, sir.
You're in a uniform, and I always ask men and women who are in uniform, how are you able to do your personal style or do your personal feeling in yourself in the uniform? But aside from that, your hair is always, we used to have this term in DC called bumped. Your hair is always bumped. Just skin,
yes,
which is important. What I tell my clients is that water, a regiment, not overly made, that your skin is immaculate, well-groomed, nails, all this. Let's talk about that for a minute. Is that something that was from day one? Your teeth, everything. It's important.
It is.
Because we see the uniform, but there's a person in the uniform. And it's important to be well-groomed because you don't get a second chance at a first impression. So let's talk about your regimen of how you feel about that.
So I'll start with my grandmother, Miss Alatris Bass. I was a young girl, maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. My grandmother taught me how to do my hair. I would press her hair with a hot comb on the stove, sit in the kitchen, and she would, and I say make, but she was teaching me. I didn't understand that back in the day, but she was teaching me how to press my hair. And what she said to me, and I remember these words very vividly, there are 3 things that you always need to do. Make sure you're clean, make sure your hair is done, and make sure you brush your teeth every single day and carry a smile. There's some days I don't smile, but carry a smile. And I've carried that over my life. You know what I wash my face with? Water. That's it. I don't put nothing else on my face. People, what do you put? Nothing. I just get up in the morning, I take a towel, and I wash my face because that's what I was taught. And my grandmother had immaculate skin. I mean, my mother had immaculate skin, not overly intoxicated, if you will, with makeup.
A lot of makeup and,
no, I just the natural you, right? And it doesn't make me. I don't think I'm better than anybody else. I'm a country girl. I come from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I don't need all the fancy stuff. Listen. I want my members, the females on the job, if they want to wear lipstick and makeup and fingernail polish, that's on them. My thing is this. I want to always be approachable. And sometimes with all of that on our face, I'm not saying everybody, y'all wear what you want to wear. It's a facade. I want you to see the real me. There are days you might see me cry. There are days you might see me go really go ham, if you will, when I'm giving an interview, depending on what I'm dealing with emotionally based on the incident or the issue. But it's really, really important for me as a young woman to take care of my personal hygiene, make sure my uniform is always pressed. There are moments I can't get to the cleaners, and you know what I do? I wash my uniform myself, and I press it with my own iron and my ironing board. I don't have people to do that stuff for me. I do it myself, probably more times than none. I wash my own clothes. I don't take them to the cleaners all the time because I figure my cleaners sometimes don't make my shirts as white as I'd like for it to be, because at any point in time I could be up in front of something. And I represent, as the chief of police, Mayor Muriel Bowser. That's who I represent. And she appointed me in this position, and certainly did not appoint me in this position to look slouchy, as my grandmother would say. But to represent women, to represent young women, to represent people here in the District of Columbia. So every single morning I get up, and then one day during the week, I make sure I go get my hair done. And that's important. To also make sure as a young woman that I can invest in making sure that I'm healthy. That's my mental health and wellness piece. Being able to have a moment where I can sit back, I can relax, and just we call it woosah in my days. Now the young people might call it something else, but just sit back and relax. And just because I have to let all of that stuff get off.
Because
of
it's
me.
a lot. I can't imagine the things that you see and the things that you hear. How are you able to balance that aside from getting your hair done? Is there something you do that you get away, or do you read, or you just
I don't get away. I don't get away much. I love to, but no, I don't. And I know what this job requires. What I do is I have to go to church. That's my sacred place. That's my and I do pray daily, and I speak to my family. Like, I tell you, that's what keeps me grounded. Like, when like this morning, my brother called and said, "Hey, I'm coming to D.C. I just want to see you," right? And talked to my sister the other day, talked to my other siblings. And that's what keeps me going, when I can hear them, and I'm Pam to them, right? I'm Pamela Smith to the rest of the world, and Chief Pamela Smith to others. But I'm Pam, right? And that's what keeps me. I need that. I cannot go. I speak to my family every single day, all day, throughout the day. There's no way I can do some of the things that I do. And some days, and I'm just gonna be frank, some days I go home and I'm just like, man, a kid was shot today, right? And I tear up because I'm human. I mean, I was like, we lost a kid in the back of a car. Like, where does that, how did that happen? And they were like, it's okay. You know, and I say, yeah, I'm gonna get through it. But that family, I gotta go see that family, right? I gotta go see the neighborhood, right? Because I didn't grow up like that. I didn't grow up like that, but I grew up with trauma. It's a different kind of trauma, right? And I can't rescue that family. I wish I could. I can't bring that child back. I wish I could. But what I can do is stand up and be present for the people. And so on those days are the days that I really spend time like being surrounded by my family. And then tomorrow morning I get back up and I'm back on my A game again, because that's what I need to refuel, right? Because they keep things in perspective for me. And my sisters will say, "You're not Chief Pamela Smith in this house. You Pam." And that's what we know you by. And I said, thank you. And
in finishing up, I'm sure that there's something that you feel, that you've identified, that's greater than you, that helps you, guides you, steers you.
Yes, sir.
To whatever you see, whatever you hear. Like you said, to bring your family in, to pray, to minister, to know the word, that when it's low, that somehow that word or that vision or that text or that scripture brings it back, that nobody can destroy, nobody can mess with. So I'm just very happy that somebody told somebody
come on here
about Pamela Smith, and that you're here,
yes, sir,
working on our behalf. You were sent to work and lobby on our behalf. And I strongly believe that. This is not rhetoric. This is not in my notes.
Yes, sir.
It's a feeling
Yes, sir.
that you were sent, you were led to be here to guide us and to help us in this mission. What are the lasting words that you would like to leave with our listeners about the journey and what to expect? And, you know, if you're thinking about a career as a woman, as a black woman, black man, or whatever, you know, because we do the Marion Barry Summer Youth Program, so we're hoping that some of the kids are listening. What is it that you would like to leave with them about a career in your journey and where they may be?
Well, I will say this, and thank you for bringing up the Marion Barry's youth program, because I'd like to at some point have some of those young people come work for me at the Metropolitan Police Department. But I think the one thing that I would say, and I've said this, kind of preface this a little bit, is that we've got to believe in something, right? And I don't know how to say this any other than that I believe in the Word of God, because that's what guides my footstep. Other people may not, but I do. And when I tell you the scripture that has gotten me through my life is Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And the reason why the word strengthens me is in that particular passage of scripture is because the Lord knew that there were going to be days where we needed to have some extra strength. The Lord knew that there was going to be trials and tribulations and things that we were going to come up against that our regular old self would just not be able to manage. And so as long as I have that inside of me, and knowing that despite what I see, despite what I go through, despite what I encounter, I gain my strength every single day when I get up, knowing, number one, that I'm on the wake-up list. That's a blessing all by itself. And then number two, I'm also grateful that the same knowledge and wisdom and experience that people have poured into me, I get to do that over again tomorrow. I get to do it the next day. I get to do it the next day down the road. And again, I told you, this isn't even about me. This is about God's people. And if people can't see what's happening right now in our communities, we need to wake up just a little bit and figure out and pay attention to what's happening in our communities, right? What I will say is about how people can become a member of the Metropolitan Police Department, because we are hiring both on the sworn and on the professional side of the house. Is going to our website at www.dc.gov. Okay. That is our website. Log on to it, reach out to us. We will find some work for you to do. The District of Columbia is still hiring, not just at the Metropolitan Police Department. There are D.C. government jobs all over the place. And a D.C. government job is a good job to have. It comes with benefits. It comes with retirement. And the one thing that I have to say about African-American people is that we don't do enough in investing in our retirement. I'm retired already once, right? I've invested, and I'm grateful to God that I could retire in my very early 50s and not have to ever want for anything, because in his word he said we will lack for nothing. And I believe that. And now I'm doing this work, and it's not even about the money. It is, when I tell people, like, oh, why would you take this job? Because there's still more work for Pamela Smith to do in the realm of law enforcement. And we've come into this space, and I have an amazing team. I'm going to say this because I've lived in 4 different states. We have the best mayor. Who supports her people. She supports public safety. She supports economic development. I mean, to be able to have all of that, and she's had some tough hits along the way. But as an African-American woman, she's doing the darn thing.
Oh, yeah, she's doing it.
And when I see her, that encourages me even more to get out there and do even more. Like, the mayor shouldn't have to walk around any place she don't want to. You know why? Because she got members on her cabinet who ought to be able to beat the pavement of the District of Columbia in our communities every single day. Why? Because we want to make sure that our community here in D.C. is so much better than what it was than when we came into it. So that's what I encourage people to do. Be about the business of the District of Columbia, because I am.
I can't think of a better way to end. We've been talking with Chief Pamela Smith. Will you come back?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And bring a piece of cake.
I'll bring some cake. I'll bring it all.
Okay, I'll have the tea, because I make really good tea.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a good dinner for me.
Thank you again for coming. You've been tuning in to Inside Style. My name is George Worrell, and remember, real style starts with being comfortable in your own skin. We'll see you next time.